The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. For 3,000 years, representatives from across the known universe had gathered in this massive chamber to discuss trade, resolve conflicts, and guide the future of 100 civilizations. The domed ceiling stretched high above, decorated with the symbols of every member species. Lights from distant stars filtered through the crystal walls. Casting gentle patterns across the floor, Ambassador Crixel of the Valoran Empire stood at the center podium. His blue scales caught the light as he read from the official document in his clawed hands. His voice echoed through the chamber, but it carried none of its usual confidence. Let it be recorded that on this day, the human collective has officially withdrawn from the Galactic Council. All treaties, agreements, and partnerships are hereby dissolved. Human space is now closed to all non-human vessels. Any ship entering human territory will be considered hostile. A murmur spread through the assembled delegates. Some whispered to each other in confusion. Others sat in stunned silence. A few tried to laugh, thinking this was some kind of strange joke. But it was no joke. The human seats in the council chamber were empty. They had been empty for 3 days now. At first, the other species thought the humans were simply late. Humans were known for being unpredictable, after all. Then they thought perhaps there was some emergency back in human space. But when the official message arrived, everything changed. High Counselor Yareth of the Mindori Collective rose from her floating chair. Her people communicated through a combination of sounds and colors. And right now her body pulsed with shades of worried purple and confused orange. "This cannot be correct," she said through her translation device. "The humans have been council members for 200 years. They helped write our current charter. Why would they leave?" No one had an answer. The truth was that the council had taken humanity for granted for far too long. When humans first made contact with the galactic community, they were seen as primitive. Their technology was centuries behind. Their lifespans were short. Their bodies were fragile compared to the armored Valorans or the massive Assortback species. But humans had something that other species lacked. They had an endless drive to solve problems. They never gave up, no matter how difficult the situation. And they worked together in ways that confused and amazed the older civilizations. Within just 50 years, humanity had caught up technologically. Within 100 years, they had become essential to the galactic economy. Human engineers designed ships that were faster and more efficient. Human doctors developed cures for diseases that had plagued other species for millennia. Human diplomats resolved conflicts that had lasted for centuries. And what did the council give them in return? Ambassador Crixel knew the answer, even if he did not want to admit it. The council had given humanity nothing but disrespect. He remembered the debates about human membership. The Valorans had argued that humans were too young, too inexperienced. The Mindori had worried that human emotions made them unstable. The ancient crystalline minds had suggested that humans should be grateful, just to be allowed into council space, and so humanity was treated as a lesser member. Their votes counted for less than others. Their proposals were often ignored. When conflicts arose, it was always humans who were asked to make sacrifices. The final insult had come just 1 month ago. The Thornback Empire had invaded a small, independent world called Verdana. The Verdanans were peaceful farmers, with no military. They had begged the council for help. The humans had immediately offered to send their fleet to protect Verdana, but the council had voted against intervention. The Valorans did not want to anger the Thornbacks. The Midori worried about the cost of war. The other species simply did not care enough about a small farming world. The Thornbacks had destroyed Verdana completely. 12 million Verdanans died. The few survivors became refugees, homeless in a universe that had failed to protect them. Human, Ambassador Sarah Chen, had stood before the council after the massacre. Her voice had been calm, but her words had burned with cold anger. "We came to this council believing that together we could build something better," she had said. "We believed that the strong should protect the weak. We believed that justice should matter more than convenience. We were wrong. This council does not share our values, and we can no longer pretend that it does." Then she had walked out. Every human delegate had followed her. Now, 3 days later, the council was finally realizing what they had lost. Trade. Minister Bordock of the Freelon Commerce Guild checked his datapad for the 10th time that hour. The numbers had not improved. Human goods made up 40% of all galactic trade. Human shipping routes connected dozens of systems that had no other way to reach each other. Human banks held the savings of trillions of beings across the galaxy. The markets are already falling, Bordak announced, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly with stress. 3 major trading houses have declared bankruptcy. The Yellick system is reporting food shortages because their supply ships cannot pass through human space anymore. Surely the humans will make exceptions for essential goods, someone suggested. Hopefully, they have made no exceptions, Crixel replied. Their borders are completely sealed. Military Commander Veroth of the Combined Defense Fleet stood up. He was a thornback, massive and covered in natural armor. His species feared nothing in the galaxy, but even Veroth looked troubled. My scouts report that human military vessels have taken up positions along their entire border, he said. Their weapons are armed. Their shields are raised. They are not bluffing. Then we must show them that they cannot simply leave, Vrath continued, his voice growing harder. We should send a fleet to remind them of their obligations and start a war with humanity. Yarth's colors shifted to alarmed red. That would be madness. They're only humans, Vrath growled. They are small and weak. They break easily. Crixel shook his head. You do not understand humans, Commander. I have worked with them for 30 years. They do not break. They bend, they adapt, and then they overcome. If you attack them, you will only unite them further. The council chamber erupted into argument. Some demanded action against humanity. Others begged for diplomacy. A few suggested simply waiting until the humans calmed down. But deep in his heart, Crixel knew the truth. The council had made a terrible mistake, and now the entire galaxy would pay the price in human space. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the station called New Hope. Through the window, she could see the lights of 1,000 ships. The human fleet had been recalled from every corner of the galaxy. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, and ordinary citizens were coming home. Behind her, General Marcus Webb studied a holographic map of known space. They will come eventually, he said. They always do, Sarah nodded. I know. And when they do, we will be ready. The council thinks we left because we were angry, Marcus continued. They think this is a tantrum that will pass. Let them think that, Sarah replied. By the time they understand the truth, it will be too late. She turned back to the window and watched the ships arriving. Humanity had spent 200 years helping the galaxy. They had solved problems, built bridges, and sacrificed their own interests for the greater good. And they had been repaid with contempt. That was over now. Humanity would no longer carry the galaxy on its shoulders. From this day forward, they would focus on themselves. They would grow stronger, smarter, and more advanced. And when the galaxy finally realized what it had lost, humanity would be ready to face whatever came next. The universe had taken humanity for granted. Now, it would learn what life was like without them, and it would tremble. 6 months had passed since humanity closed its borders, and the galaxy was beginning to fall apart. The first signs of trouble appeared in the medical sector. For decades, human pharmaceutical companies had supplied cheap and effective medicines to hundreds of worlds. Human doctors had trained medical students from every species. Human hospitals had treated patients that no one else could help. Now all of that was gone. On the planet Kethris's prime, hospitals ran out of basic antibiotics within the first month. The Kethrian people had never learned to manufacture these drugs themselves. Why would they, when humans sold them for almost nothing? Within weeks, diseases that should have been easily treatable began spreading through the population. The Kethrian ambassador begged the council for help. Surely someone else could make these medicines. They could not. Human pharmaceutical science was 100 years ahead of everyone else. Other species could copy the formulas, but they lacked the specialized equipment and techniques to produce the drugs in large quantities. Building new factories would take years. Millions would die waiting. Similar stories came from across the galaxy. The Yellick system, which depended on human food shipments, was rationing meals. The frontier colonies, which relied on human security patrols, were being attacked by pirates. The central banking network, which was built on human financial systems, was experiencing daily crashes. And then there was the power crisis. Humanity had developed the most efficient fusion reactors in the galaxy. These reactors powered space stations, colonies, and cities across dozens of systems. Human engineers maintained them, and human factories produced replacement parts. When the humans left, they took their engineers with them. They stopped selling replacement parts, and one by one, the reactors began to fail. The great space station Nexus 7 was the first major casualty. This massive structure served as a trading hub for 6 different species. Over 2 million beings lived and worked there. When its main reactor failed, backup systems could only provide power for essential services. Lights went out. Climate control stopped working. Shops and businesses closed. The station's administrator, Valora named Drix, sent increasingly desperate messages to the council. "We need human engineers," he reported. "Only they understand how these reactors work. Without them, we will have to evacuate the entire station." The council tried to help. They sent their own engineers to study the human technology. But the reactor systems were incredibly complex, designed with techniques that no other species had ever seen. Every attempt to repair them only made things worse. Within 3 months, Nexus 7 was abandoned. 2 million refugees scattered across the galaxy. Looking for new homes that did not want them, High Counselor Yareth called an emergency session to address the growing crisis. The council chamber was fuller than usual. Every species wanted answers. Every species wanted someone to blame. "We must send an embassy to human space," Yareth proposed. "We must apologize for our past treatment and ask them to return." "Apologize?" Commander Varath slammed his armored fist against his desk. "We should not beg these creatures for anything. We should take what we need by force. You tried that last month," Ambassador Crixel reminded him coldly. "How did that work out?" Vareth fell silent. Everyone remembered what had happened. The Thornback Empire had sent a fleet of 50 warships to seize a human mining colony near the border. They expected easy victory. Humans were weak, after all. Humans could be broken. The battle lasted 12 minutes. Human defense. Systems destroyed 30 Thornback ships before the attackers even got within weapons range. The remaining 20 ships fled in panic. Not a single human vessel was scratched. The galaxy had known that humans were clever. They had not known that humans were also terrifying in combat. "The humans have been preparing for this," Crixel explained to the council. "They knew that eventually someone would try to take from them by force. So they built defenses that none of us can penetrate. Their weapons are more powerful than anything we have ever seen. Their shields absorb attacks that should destroy entire fleets." "How is this possible?" someone asked. "They were the youngest species in the council. They should be behind us, not ahead." "Because we underestimated them," Crixel answered. "We thought their short lifespans made them weak. But it made them urgent. While we took centuries to develop new technologies, humans did it in decades. While we debated and discussed, they built and tested and improved." The council fell into troubled silence. Far away, in human space, life was flourishing. The borders had been sealed. But humanity had not stopped working. If anything, the isolation had focused their efforts in remarkable ways, without the need to help other species. Human scientists could concentrate on their own advancement. New technologies emerged every month. Better medical treatments, cleaner energy sources, faster ships, smarter artificial intelligence. Ambassador Sarah Chen toured a new research facility on Mars. The red planet had been transformed over the past 2 centuries. Cities now covered its surface. Forests grew under protective domes. Rivers flowed through ancient canyons. "We should have done this long ago," said Director Elena Vasquez, head of the Advanced Research Division. "We spent so much time solving everyone else's problems that we forgot to solve our own." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Do you think we made the right choice? Leaving the council? I think we had no choice, Alina replied. The council would have kept using us forever. They would have drained our resources, exploited our generosity, and given us nothing but contempt in return. At least now we can build something for ourselves. They walked past laboratories where scientists worked on projects that would have seemed impossible just years ago. One team was developing a new type of engine that could travel between galaxies. Another was creating artificial ecosystems that could transform dead worlds into living paradises. A third was exploring the nature of consciousness itself, trying to understand what made intelligent life special. We are entering a new age, Alina said. The age of humanity alone. But I do not think we will be alone forever. What do you mean? The galaxy needs us, Alina explained. They do not want to admit it, but they cannot survive without what we offer. Eventually, they will come to us. And when they do, we will be ready to set new terms. Sarah considered this. It was true that the council had treated humanity poorly, but she did not hate the other species. She simply wanted respect. She wanted humanity to be seen as equals, not servants. When they come, she said finally, we should be generous. Not because we are weak, but because we are strong. We should show them what true leadership looks like. Lena smiled. That is very human of you.
Ow.
Meanwhile, the crisis in council space continued to grow. Pirates attacked shipping lanes that human patrols had once protected. Criminal organizations expanded into territories that human law enforcement had once watched. Political conflicts erupted between species that human diplomats had once kept peaceful. The Valoran Empire and the Mindori Collective, longtime allies, began arguing over trade routes. Without human mediators, small disagreements became major disputes. Threats were exchanged. Fleets were mobilized. Ambassador Crixel watched the growing chaos with deep sadness. He had always believed in the Council. He had believed that together, the species of the galaxy could achieve great things. But now he understood the truth. The Council had never really been unified. It had only seemed that way because humans held everything together. They had been the glue, the bridge, the foundation. Without them, the whole structure was collapsing. Crixel made a decision. He would go to human space himself, not as a representative of the Council, but as an individual. He would apologize for his own failures. He would ask for nothing except the chance to understand. Maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to start healing the wound that the galaxy had inflicted upon itself. He prepared his ship for a journey that might be his last. The humans had warned that any vessel entering their space would be treated as hostile. But Crixel believed that humans were better than their threats. He believed in their essential goodness. He only hoped that he was right, as his ship lifted off from the Council homeworld. Crixel looked back at the fading lights of civilization. The galaxy was trembling. But perhaps with enough courage and humility, it could learn to stand on its own. Or perhaps it would fall completely. Only time would tell, Ambassador. Crixel's ship drifted through the darkness between stars. He had been traveling for 3 weeks, following the old trade routes toward human space. With each passing day, the signals from Council space grew weaker, and the silence of the void grew deeper. He knew he was taking a great risk. The humans had been clear about their borders. No unauthorized vessels would be permitted. Those who ignored the warning would face consequences. But Crixel believed that sometimes risks were necessary. Sometimes one being had to take the first step toward healing. The border of human space appeared on his sensors as a line of automated defense platforms. These massive structures floated silently in the darkness, their weapons powered down but ready. Crixel counted at least 50 platforms within sensor range. Each one could destroy his small, diplomatic ship in seconds. He opened a communication channel and spoke in the clearest voice he could manage. This is Ambassador Crixel of the Valoran Empire. I come alone and unarmed. I seek only to speak with the human leadership. I carry no weapons and no demands. I come as a friend, seeking understanding.
Ow!
There was no response. Crixel waited. Minutes passed, then hours. He remained at the border, his ship holding position, refusing to turn back. He would wait as long as necessary. Finally, a voice crackled through his communication system. It was a human voice, young and professional. Ambassador Crixel, your presence has been noted. You are in violation of the border closure. However, given your history of fair dealing with human representatives, your request is being considered. Please remain where you are. More waiting followed. Crixel used the time to think about what he would say. He had spent decades as a diplomat, but this conversation might be the most important of his life. He could not simply speak official words. He needed to speak from his heart. After several hours, a new message arrived. Ambassador Crixel, you are granted temporary passage into human space. A escort will guide you to Station Unity, where Ambassador Chen has agreed to meet with you. You will follow all instructions precisely. Any deviation will result in immediate removal. I understand and accept these terms, Crixel replied. Thank you. A sleek human vessel appeared beside his ship, its design elegant and efficient. Crixel followed it. Through the defense network and into human territory, what he saw amazed him. Human space had always been impressive, but now it seemed transformed. New stations orbited every planet. Massive construction projects filled the spaces between worlds. Ships of every size moved in organized patterns, like blood flowing through a living body. Most striking were the colony worlds. Through his sensors, Crixel could see planets that had been barren rocks just years ago. Now they supported forests, oceans, and cities. Human terraforming. Technology had advanced far beyond anything the Council had known about. The escort ship led him to Station Unity, an enormous structure that served as the new capital of human civilization. The station was shaped like a great wheel, spinning slowly to create gravity. Light sparkled across its surface like stars, brought down from the sky. Crixel docked his ship and stepped into the station with careful respect. Human guards met him at the airlock. They were polite but watchful, their hands never far from their weapons. He understood their caution and accepted it without complaint. They led him through corridors filled with busy humans. Everyone seemed to have purpose and direction. There were no beggars, no signs of poverty, no evidence of the suffering that was spreading across Council space. Here, civilization was thriving. Ambassador Sarah Chen waited in a simple meeting room. There was no grand furniture, no displays of power, just 2 chairs and a table. Sarah stood as Crixel entered and she offered a slight bow of acknowledgement. Ambassador Crixel, she said, I admit I was surprised by your request. You were never among those who treated humanity with disrespect. That does not make me innocent, Crixel replied. I stood silent when others spoke against you. I accepted benefits that should have been shared more fairly. I was comfortable while your people were exploited. Sarah studied him for a long moment. Her face revealed nothing, but her eyes seemed to search for truth in his words. Why did you come? She asked finally. Because the galaxy is dying, Crixel said simply. Not quickly, but surely. Without humanity, we cannot maintain what we have built. Our medicine fails. Our power systems collapse. Our societies tear themselves apart. We never realized how much we depended on you until you were gone, and you think we should return? After everything that was done to us? No, Crixel shook his head. I do not come to ask you to return. That would be unfair. I come to understand why you left, so that I might explain to others. I come to learn what we did wrong, so that we might not repeat our mistakes. And I come to apologize, personally, for my own failures. Sarah was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Do you know what hurt us most? It was not the disrespect. It was not being treated as lesser. We could have endured that. What hurt us was Verdana. The name fell heavily in the room. Crixel remembered the small farming world destroyed by the Thornbacks while the Council did nothing. Whoa. 12 million innocent people died because we were too weak to protect them, Sarah continued. They called to us for help. They trusted us to do the right thing. And we had to watch them die because the Council decided that peace with the Thornbacks was more important than justice. We begged the Council to act, she said. We offered to send our own fleet. We promised to bear all the costs ourselves. But you all said no. You said it was not worth the risk. You sacrificed 12 million lives because saving them was inconvenient. Crixel bowed his head in shame. There was nothing he could say. She was right. That is when we understood, Sarah continued. The Council did not see us as partners. It saw us as useful tools. It was happy to take our help, our technology, our sacrifice. But when we needed support, we were alone. Always alone, so we decided to actually be alone, she finished. At least then, we would not have to watch innocent people die while our so-called allies looked the other way. Crixel felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. He had known that humanity was angry, but he had not truly understood the depth of their pain. This was not a political dispute. This was a wound in their very soul. What can we do? He asked quietly. How can we make this right? Sarah looked at him with an expression that mixed sadness with the smallest hint of hope. That is the question I have been asking myself for months, she said. I do not know if it can be made right, but I know where it must start. Where? With truth, Sarah said. The Council must admit what it did, not in private, but publicly. Every species must acknowledge that they exploited humanity and failed Verdana. They must accept responsibility for their choices. And then we see what grows from honest ground. Sarah rose from her chair and walked to a window that looked out over the station. Ships moved through the darkness beyond, carrying the hopes of human civilization. We do not want to be alone forever, she admitted. Humans are social creatures. We thrive through connection, but we will not return to a relationship built on lies and exploitation. If the galaxy wants us back, it must earn our trust. That will take time and genuine change. Crixel joined her at the window. For a moment, they stood in silence, watching the stars. I will carry your message back to the Council, he said finally. I will tell them the truth, even if they do not want to hear it. Perhaps some will listen. Perhaps change is possible. Perhaps Sarah agreed. Or perhaps they will learn nothing, and the galaxy will continue to fall apart. That is not something we can control. All we can do is speak honestly and hope that others choose to listen. She turned to face him directly. You took a great risk coming here, Ambassador. You could have been destroyed at the border. Why did you really come? Crixel thought carefully before answering. 'Cause I believe in second chances, he said. My people have a saying, the path to wisdom begins with admitting you were lost. The galaxy was lost when it drove humanity away. I wanted to take the first step toward finding the right path again. For the first time since he arrived, Sarah smiled. It was a small smile, tired but real. Then perhaps there is hope after all, she said. Travel safely, Ambassador, and good luck. You will need it. Crixel returned to his ship with a heavy heart, but a determined spirit. The journey ahead would be difficult. Many would reject his message. Some would call him a traitor. But he knew he was doing the right thing. As his ship departed Station Unity, he looked back at the lights of human civilization. Somewhere behind those lights, a wounded people were healing themselves. They were building something new, something stronger, and somehow, some way, the galaxy would have to learn to deserve them. Ambassador Crixel stood before the full Galactic Council for the first time since his unauthorized journey to human space. The chamber was packed with representatives from every member species. News of his visit had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to hear what he had learned. High Counselor Yereth called the assembly to order. Her colors shifted through patterns of formal purple and curious blue. Ambassador Crixel has returned from human territory, she announced. He will now share his observations with this body. We will listen without interruption. Crixel stepped to the central podium. He felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. Some were curious. Others were hostile. A few, like Commander Verith of the Thornbacks, seemed barely able to contain their anger. I went to human space seeking understanding, Crixel began. I found more than I expected. I found truth that this council does not want to hear. But I will speak it anyway, because our survival depends on facing reality. He took a deep breath and continued. The humans left because we failed them. Not once, but repeatedly, over 200 years. We took their help and gave nothing in return. We accepted their sacrifices and called them weak. We used their generosity and mocked them behind their backs. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others looked offended. But the breaking point was Verdana, Crixel said. When the Thornbacks attacked that peaceful world, the humans begged us to help. They offered to do all the fighting themselves. They asked only for our support, and we refused. He turned to face Commander Verath directly. 12 million innocent people died because this council was afraid of offending the Thornback Empire. We chose diplomatic convenience over justice. We chose comfort over doing what was right. Verath rose from his seat, his armored body towering over those around him. "How dare you?" the Thornback commander growled. Verdana was within our sphere of influence. We had every right to bring them under our control. The humans had no business interfering. And that, Crixel replied calmly, is exactly the attitude that drove humanity away. You see conquest as a right. You see the suffering of others as unimportant. You cannot understand why anyone would care about a small farming world with nothing to offer. But the humans cared, he continued. They cared about 12 million beings they had never met, simply because those beings needed help. That is what makes humanity different from us. That is what we have lost. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted at each other. Some defended Verath in the old ways. Others supported Crixel's call for change. Yareth struggled to restore order, while the council argued. A new crisis was developing far from their comfortable chamber, on the outer edges of known space. Something terrible was waking up. Long-range sensors detected strange signals coming from the Void Territories, a region of space that no species had ever explored. The signals were unlike anything in any database. They pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive, growing stronger with each passing day. Scout ships were sent to investigate. None returned. Then the attacks began. The first colony to fall was Korath Station, a mining outpost at the edge of Midori space. One day, it was broadcasting normal reports. The next day, it was silent. When rescue ships arrived, they found only debris and death. More attacks followed. Frontier settlements disappeared overnight. Defense outposts were overwhelmed in minutes. Whatever was coming from the void was powerful, numerous. It's completely merciless. The Galactic Council had faced threats before. Wars between member species, pirate fleets, natural disasters. But this was different. This enemy was unknown and seemingly unstoppable. Within weeks, panic spread across Council space. Refugees fled toward the core worlds. Military forces scrambled to establish defensive lines. Politicians demanded action, but no one knew what action to take, and through it all, the humans remained behind their closed borders. Watching Ambassador Sarah Chen received hourly reports about the crisis, she stood in the war room of Station Unity, studying holographic displays that showed the spreading destruction. Council is calling them the Void Swarm, reported General Marcus Webb. They seem to be some kind of collective intelligence. Billions of organisms acting as one. Their ships are biological, grown rather than built. Their weapons are unlike anything we have seen. Can the Council forces stop them? Sarah asked. Not a chance. Marcus manipulated the display to show military projections. The Council fleets are disorganized. Each species fights differently, with different equipment and different tactics. They have never faced a truly unified enemy before. Because we always fought their battles for them, Sarah said quietly. Exactly. Without human leadership and human technology, they cannot coordinate an effective defense. At current rates, the Void Swarm will reach the Council core worlds within 6 months. Sarah was quiet for a long time. She thought about the Council and everything it had done to humanity. She thought about the insults, the exploitation, the betrayal over Verdana. Part of her felt that the Council was getting exactly what it deserved. But then she thought about the ordinary people. The farmers on distant worlds who had never voted to mistreat humanity. The children who had done nothing wrong. The millions of innocent beings who would die if the Void Swarm was not stopped. "We cannot let them all die," she said finally. "They abandoned us," Marcus reminded her. "They watched Verdana burn and did nothing." "I know." Sarah turned to face him. "And if we watch their worlds burn, how are we any better? We left the council because they valued convenience over justice. If we refuse to help now, are we not doing the same thing?" Marcus had no answer. "Contact High Counselor Yareth," Sarah ordered. "Tell her that humanity is willing to discuss terms for emergency assistance. Make it clear that we are not returning to the council, but we are willing to help them survive." The message crossed the void between human space and the council in seconds. When Yareth received it, her colors shifted through emotions too complex to name: relief, shame, hope, fear, all mixed together in a swirling pattern. That had no precedent in Mindori history. She called an emergency session immediately. "Humans have offered to help us fight the Void Swarm," she announced. "They have not forgotten what we did to them, but they are willing to set aside their anger to save innocent lives. They are better than us. They have always been better than us." Even Vareth could not argue. The Thornback Empire was already losing territory to the Swarm. His people were dying by the thousands. Pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. "What do they want in return?" he asked reluctantly. "I do not know yet," Yareth admitted. "Ambassador Chen has agreed to meet with a council delegation to discuss terms. She has specified only one condition." "What condition?" "The delegation must include Ambassador Crixel." Yareth's colors showed something like respect. She says he is the only council member she trusts. Crixel felt a strange mixture of honor and fear. The fate of the galaxy might rest on his ability to negotiate successfully. It was a tremendous responsibility, but it was also an opportunity. A chance to build a new relationship between humanity and the rest of civilization. A chance to create something better than what had existed before. He accepted the role without hesitation, as the council prepared its delegation. The Void Swarm continued its relentless advance. Worlds burned. People fled. The comfortable assumptions of 1,000 years crumbled into dust, but for the first time since humanity closed its borders, there was hope. Small and fragile, but real. The humans were coming, and perhaps, just perhaps, they would save everyone despite everything that had been done to them. That was the kind of species they were. That was why the galaxy had always needed them. Even when it refused to admit the truth, Sarah Chen looked out at the stars from her observation deck. Somewhere out there, an enemy was approaching. Somewhere out there, former allies were suffering. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered. "We have work to do." Humanity had spent 6 months healing from the wounds the Council had inflicted. Now it was time to remind the universe why they had been essential in the first place. Not for revenge. Not for payment. Not for respect, but because it was right. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace, like a wave of light breaking through darkness. 3,000 ships of every size appeared in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with advanced technology that made council vessels look like antiques. At the center of the formation flew the flagship Unity, a massive dreadnought that carried Ambassador Sarah Chen, General Marcus Webb, and the hopes of a galaxy. The council delegation had arrived at the meeting point 2 days earlier. Their ships floated nervously in space, tiny compared to the human fleet. Ambassador Crixel stood on the bridge of his vessel, watching the human ships arrange themselves with military precision. "They could destroy us all in moments," whispered a Mindori aide beside him. "Look at those weapon systems. We have nothing that could even scratch their shields." "That is why we are not here to fight," Crixel replied calmly. "We are here to ask for mercy, and to offer something we should have given long ago: respect." The meeting took place aboard the Unity in a conference room designed for exactly this kind of negotiation. The council delegation included representatives from every major species. High Counselor Yareth spoke for the Minori. Commander Varath reluctantly represented the Thornbacks. Leaders of a dozen other civilizations sat in uncomfortable chairs. Waiting to hear humanity's demands, Ambassador Chen entered with General Webb at her side. She looked at the assembled delegates with an expression that showed neither anger nor warmth, just calm determination. The Void Swarm will reach the first Council core world in approximately 4 months. She began without any greeting. Based on our analysis, Council forces cannot stop them. If current trends continue, half of known space will be consumed within 2 years. No one disputed her assessment. The evidence was too clear. Humanity is willing to lead the defense against this threat, Chen continued. Our technology and tactics are capable of defeating the swarm. However, we will not do this for free. We will not return to being the galaxy's servants, taken for granted and disrespected. Name your terms, Yareth said, her colors subdued with humility. Chen activated a holographic display. It showed a document titled, "The New Compact," in the languages of every species present. First, the Galactic Council as it existed will be dissolved. In its place, a new alliance will be formed with humanity as an equal founding member. All species will have equal voting rights. No more tiered membership based on age or power. The delegates murmured, but did not object. Second, the events of Verdana will be publicly acknowledged. Every species that voted against intervention will issue formal apologies. Monuments will be built to honor the dead. The Thornback Empire will pay reparations to the surviving refugees. Vrot's armored body tensed, but he remained silent. His people needed help too badly to argue. Third, a new code of justice will be established. When innocent people are threatened, the Alliance will be required to act. No more hiding behind political convenience. No more sacrificing the weak to please the strong. Sarah paused, looking around the room at faces filled with shame and fear. These terms are not negotiable, she said. Accept them, and humanity will fight beside you. Reject them, and we will return to our space. We will survive the swarm behind our own defenses. You will not. The choice was simple. The choice was obvious. But it still took 3 hours of discussion before every species agreed. When the final signatures were recorded, Crixel felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. Thank you, he said to Sarah when the meeting ended. You could have asked for so much more. You could have demanded total control. Instead, you asked only for fairness. We did not leave because we wanted power, Sarah replied. We left because we wanted respect. Now we have it. And hopefully, we will never need to leave again. The war against the Void Swarm lasted 18 months. Human generals took command of the combined fleets. Human engineers upgraded Council ships with better weapons and shields. Human doctors treated the wounded. Human diplomats kept the fractious alliance from falling apart during difficult times. But this time, they were not alone. Other species contributed their own strengths. The Mindori provided their telepathic communication abilities, allowing perfect coordination across vast distances. The Valorans offered their armored warriors as ground troops. Even the Thornbacks fought with unexpected courage, driven by guilt and a genuine desire to prove themselves worthy of forgiveness. The turning point came at the Battle of Nexus Reach, where the combined alliance faced the main Void Swarm fleet. For 3 days, thousands of ships fought across a region of space larger than most star systems. Casualties were heavy on both sides. General Webb commanded from the Bridge of the Unity, his voice steady as he directed thousands of vessels through complex maneuvers. Human tactical genius combined with alien abilities to create something new, true cooperation between species that had never trusted each other before. When the swarm fleet finally broke, scattering back toward the void from which it came, cheers erupted across 100 worlds. For the first time in history, the galaxy had fought together as one. The years that followed were years of rebuilding. Destroyed worlds were restored. Refugees returned to their homes. New relationships formed between species that had once been rivals or enemies. The new compact proved stronger than the old council had ever been. With humanity as a true partner, the alliance accomplished things that would have seemed impossible before. Poverty was eliminated across dozens of worlds. Diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia were cured. Trade flourished. Science advanced. Art and culture blossomed in ways that enriched every species. Ambassador Chen retired from public life after the war. content that she had accomplished what she set out to do. She was succeeded by a new generation of diplomats who had grown up in an era of genuine equality. They did not carry the wounds of the past, and they built relationships based on mutual respect rather than old resentments. Ambassador Crixel was honored by the new alliance as the father of reconciliation. Statues of him stood beside statues of human leaders on a dozen worlds. He spent his remaining years teaching young diplomats about the importance of honesty and humility. Commander Vareth, surprisingly, became one of humanity's strongest allies. The Thornback leader never forgot the mercy that humans had shown his people. He dedicated himself to ensuring that his species would never again cause the kind of suffering they had inflicted on Verdana and on a small planet near the edge of human space. A memorial stood to honor the 12 million beings who had died because the old council refused to help. Visitors came from across the galaxy to pay their respects. The names of every Verdanan victim were carved into walls of polished stone, so that no one would ever forget the cost of indifference. Humanity had learned something important during their time of isolation. They had learned that their strength came not from being needed by others, but from knowing who they truly were. They helped the galaxy not because they were obligated, but because helping was simply what humans did. The universe had trembled when humanity left, but it had transformed when humanity returned. Perhaps that was the most human thing of all, the ability to forgive, to rebuild and to create something better from the ashes of what had been destroyed. Other species might have held grudges forever. Humans moved forward. 1,000 years later, historians would look back at this period as the beginning of a golden age. They would study the old council and its failures. They would analyze the crisis of the Void Swarm. They would praise the wisdom of those who had chosen reconciliation over revenge. But more than anything, they would marvel at the species that had made it all possible. The species that was small and fragile and short-lived. The species that everyone had underestimated. The species that had walked away from the galaxy and then come back to save it. Humans, the universe had trembled without them, with them. It had learned to stand tall and together. All the species of the galaxy reached toward a future brighter than any of them could have achieved alone. It was not a perfect future. There were still disagreements, still conflicts, still challenges to overcome. But it was a future built on truth and equality, justice. It was a future that humanity had made possible, not through conquest, not through force, but through the simple, powerful act of refusing to accept anything less than respect. That was the legacy they left to the stars. That was why the universe would never forget them, and that was why, when new species were discovered in distant galaxies, the first thing they learned was this: never underestimate humanity. They may seem weak. They may seem simple. They may seem easy to exploit, but when the darkness comes, and all hope seems lost, humans will stand against it. They always have. They always will. The end.